Welcome to the Speak Like a Leader podcast with John Bates. Welcome to the show. With me today is someone who, at the very least, has a fabulous accent that I think you're going to love. And there's actually really much more. Just want to say, if you have an interest in finding out more about working with me, getting some support on a TED-like talk, getting some support in any kind of leadership communication role, strategic messaging, please check out ed.executivespeakingsuccess.com. At that link, you can find all of our current ongoing classes and courses. And if you want to reach out to us, you can find us at executivespeakingsuccess.com. I'd love to hear from you if I can be of service. And now, to someone who is definitely of service, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very excited to welcome to the show Vince Warnock. Vince is an author, a marketing coach, and host of Chasing the Insights, a great podcast. And you can find him, just so you know right off the bat, at chasingtheinsights.com. And you can find him on Facebook and LinkedIn. And the link to both of those is at chasingtheinsights.com. So welcome, Vince. It's good to see you.
It is so good to be here, John. Seriously, whenever Star Wars freaks like us get together, it's going to be messy, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
You're totally right. And even though this is just an audio podcast, I do want everyone to know that the Star Wars paraphernalia behind Vince is pretty much second to none. I see lightsabers. I see R2-D2. I see, stormtroopers. It's all there.
Oh, man, my pride and joy is I've got this Darth Vader, this big Darth Vader in the background. That was literally our receptionist at one of my old startups. Like anytime anyone came in, they were greeted by Darth Vader there. It was glorious.
That is a great. Darth would be an excellent receptionist.
Oh yeah. It scares off the people we don't.
So
the spammers, the people that come in to sell you something, scares them off, and everybody else just makes them feel welcome.
Exactly. That's perfect. I love it. Well, so that was clearly one of the things that Vince and I connected on was our love of Star Wars. Vince, you got a pretty interesting story. How did you get to be an author, a marketing coach, and host of Chasing the Insights podcast? Tell us how
I feel like,
happened.
John, I feel like I should start with a long time ago in a galaxy far away.
Far away, yes.
Now, look,
it feels like it, doesn't it?
It certainly does, man. It does. Look, I've been in and out of entrepreneurship and corporate life most of my career, so I kind of switched between the two. So in the early days, it was creating and failing at a lot of companies and going back to corporate, but then it became creating and selling a number of companies. And I'd just come off the back of selling my largest startup. So it was something I co-founded with a friend of mine. We built it over 3.5 years, exited for 8 figures, and then found myself joining the team at Cigna Insurance and becoming the chief marketing officer there. So that was an amazing run. Right, coming off the back of that success, finding myself at Cigna in this really, exclusive kind of position there, and I was on paper getting all the results. Like seriously, we had doubled the income of the company in the time I was there. We had gone from the either 7th or 6th, I can't remember which largest insurer, to the second largest insurer, and I had taken the online sales, something that everyone said, "Oh, you can't do that. You can't. Nobody buys insurance online, but it's certainly not life insurance or medical or anything." And I'm like, hold my beer. I've got this. So we took online sales from almost nothing to a huge, in fact, the largest portion of our sales for the organization. So on paper, it's looking great.
Hold on for 1 second, because we are in the midst of the pandemic right now.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that is a really big wake-up call to everybody, including me, anybody that wants to get the wake-up call, right? This is a company that said no one does that online. And at a time when everybody didn't have to, you took that from almost nothing to the biggest segment of the company's income. Yeah. Imagine what that would be if everybody had to do that online like they do right now, right? I think
This is the key thing, John. I get so excited about this, man. Like seriously, first of all, when anyone says you can't do that, then I'm usually going to end up doing it. That's just fact, right? But the other aspect to it is it's about challenging our understanding of that. So, for example, everybody thought to take a huge form, which essentially was filling out life insurance, to take a huge form and put that online is going to mean people are going to get bored. They're not going to really know. They're going to find it difficult, and they go, I'm out. So what we did is we actually challenged the concepts behind it. We didn't just take a form and put it online. We challenged their understanding of it. We realized that as you go through filling out something that's complex and personal like that, you need to know exactly why people are asking the questions they're asking. We need to know exactly what's happening during the process and what I can expect. Because if they have a clear understanding of that, and also, by the way, even adding in this weird concept called social currency, like actually teaching them as they go through the process what happens. Like, for example, when you give your height and weight, why do we need that? But what happens with that information? So actually giving them something that they can, if they're really bored at a dinner party, go, well, I happen to have learnt a thing or two when I was filling out a form. So we challenge the actual core of that. And what we found is people respond to it really, really well. So it's just really about understanding human nature. But the interesting thing was, despite all of that, man, like seriously, I'm, like I said, on paper, everything's looking amazing. And I'm certainly getting the accolades for that. I was getting the recognition I was getting. I was speaking all over the globe, especially about that aspect of taking things that normally don't fit online or don't traditionally work online and making them work online. Then I published my first book when I was there. I was winning all these awards. I got recognized by Adobe as one of the top 50 marketers in the world. On paper, it's all crushing it. And yet I'm sitting in my corner office there, and I'm like, why am I not happy? Why do I feel incredibly unfulfilled? And that was the point where I realized my time there was done, and I need to get back to who I am. And this is part of the challenge I had. I love the team at Cigna. I love the work that we did. I love my team that worked for me. I love the team that I work for, in the senior leadership there. But the challenge I had was I'm not a chief marketing officer by definition. Right? Because when you're at that level, you treat everyone as a number and a dollar sign. And I'm like, yep, that's all good. And I know that that needs to happen at that level, but that's not who I am. I am somebody who is very people orientated. I'm somebody who needs to be surrounded by people that I'm helping, that I'm impacting. I need to know that I'm adding value. So that created this pull, this tug within me. And at the end of 2019, that all came to a head where I'm like, you know what? I'm done. I kind of approached the Christmas holidays. I set goals for myself each year, John. So I go, right, I'm going to set 25 goals for myself for the year. And I'm going to see, basically I crush them every year. So I'm like, right, this is going to be awesome. And then I got to the end of the 25, near the end of the year, and realized I hadn't got anywhere near those 25 goals. So I'm approaching Christmas. I'm going to take some proper time off, and I'm going to crush all of these goals. And then about 2 days into that, I realized I was burning out and I was really unhappy. And I thought, what the hell am I doing, man? So I made the easiest hard decision of my life, contacted the CEO and just said, I think I'm done. I think I need to move on. I want to move on and just become a full-time author. That was my whole goal. I'm writing another book, or I was going to write this other book. And then I left to do that. She thought I was completely insane. She was like, are you mad? Do you know how much we pay you? And I'm like, it's not about that. It's about feeling fulfilled. And she goes, I don't quite understand. And I'm like, and that's part of the reason I'm moving on. So January 2020, that was it. I was out of there. I moved on, and I was focused on writing this next book. Got bored after about a week. Decided that I can't just write a book on it. So ended up writing 2 books. Now I've got 4 books that are being published this year. Another 3 books next year. I love writing. But in that time, I also then launched my podcast, of course. And then this weird thing happened in the world called the pandemic, called COVID. And we ended up in a scenario where all the people that I was interviewing for my book, all these amazing entrepreneurs from all over the world, we had US, Canada, South Africa, UK, Australia, New Zealand, all in the same position where they went, hey, we would love to keep helping you, Vince, but we're freaking out right now. We have no revenue coming in the door. We've got all the same overheads, and we don't even know if we're going to exist in 2 months' time. And that broke my heart. I'm like, these are amazing people. Entrepreneurs in themselves are amazing people. I just have such a soft spot for entrepreneurs and for entrepreneurship itself. And I turned around to my wife and she's like, you can't let this go, can you? And I went, nah. And she goes, you're going to have to help, aren't you? And I went, yeah. So I asked them all if I could come alongside them and just see what I can do. And they all said yes. We didn't have a single casualty through all of this, which was wonderful. So even during lockdown, we turned them all around to profitable very, very quickly. Even had some really good success cases. 3 of them ended up doubling their revenue during a lockdown. And then the other one, I almost hate calling them this because they're going to kill me, but there's 2 little old ladies in Melbourne. Their business ended up tripling its revenue because they had no idea what they were sitting on. They were sitting on this business that they thought was a boutique little niche business that doesn't belong online. And I'm like, hang on a minute.
About it.
Oh,
tell us about it. It's such a great story.
Oh my goodness.
And it's so interesting. And I mean, again, this is one of those things where one of the things I've been thinking about a lot over the past week or two, Vince, is beginner's mind.
Yeah.
And how can I be continuously bringing beginner's mind, that same enthusiasm, that same interest level, the many possibilities versus there's only two ways to do this. And I think this is a great example of beginner's mind on some level.
For sure. Well, these two women, they're wonderful. And they had built this business around their passion, which is knitting. I kid you not. Apparently this is a thing. So they had this certified knitting cafe. So this is a cafe that you can rock on up to. You can buy your wool and your knitting needles and other things that I'll pretend I understand about knitting, but I really don't. But you can buy your products from there. You get your cup of tea and your scones with jam and cream on, and you sit there and you learn to knit with their experts. They have little classes in there. You buy products and you hang out with other knitters. And then they expanded it, and they did these like knitting vineyard tours, where all these people would sign up. They'd go out to a vineyard. They'd learn to knit a couple of different things. They'd be inspired. Then they'd drink a lot of alcohol. They would do karaoke and they would do dancing, and they would have a really good time. And then they did these knitting cruises, where you would go on these cruises. You would learn to knit a few different things. You'd be inspired. You drink a lot of alcohol. You do some karaoke, and then you do some dancing. There's some common themes among their events.
Yeah, there's a theme. Yeah.
But of course, COVID put pay to all of that. Their shop had to shut, and Melbourne was in lockdown for over a year, man. So the shop had to shut. They couldn't sell their suppliers. They couldn't, obviously serve anyone any kind of drinks or food or anything like that. And of course, the cruise definitely off. The vineyard tour off as well. So one of the things I challenged them was, look, can we put this online? At least put your products online to start with, right? Let's get those onto a website. It's relatively easy. And they were like, oh, Vince, we'd love to, but we've been there before and it didn't work. And I said, well, tell me what you mean. They paid someone, and this is this always makes me annoyed,
story.
Man. Yeah, they paid someone $10,000 to build their website. They didn't finish it. They just vanished into the ether, took the money and ran. So then they were like, well, we don't know what to do. So they hired somebody else and said, can you come in and finish this project? And the person said, I can certainly do that, except I'm not familiar with that technology. I'd have to rebuild it completely, and it's going to cost you about 10 grand. And by the way, I don't do this aspect, this aspect, this aspect. And we're sprouting out all these technical terms. These two women just said, look, we know we've been taken for a ride, but we just don't know enough to even ask the right questions. And I said, well, how about over a weekend, I teach the two of you how to use Shopify. I teach you the concepts behind online selling, the concepts behind how to actually make a connection with people, and you get your shop up and running. And they went, no. And I went, damn it. They said, we can't do that. We're technological, or they call them, I can't even repeat the word that they use. They said, we're technology. They said, but we really struggle with technology. And I said, okay, well, how about this? If I fail to teach the two of you over this weekend, I will buy you both a bottle of expensive gin. And they were like, yes, we're in. I also didn't realize, John, they could have backfired big time if they just went, yeah, we'll just pretend and get the gin anyway.
Yeah, depends on what they want more, the gin or actually the understanding.
But it was so awesome seeing them empowered. And over the period of the weekend, they realized just how easy online sales are, just how easy marketing is. We put it together. The beauty as well, by the way, they had 850 products, but they didn't have to manually input them. Their point of sale system literally just spat out a CSV file, so just like a spreadsheet of all their product information. Import it straight into Shopify, boom, they're up and running. So on the Monday, they launched. But the launch was so special to me because watching them, they do these Facebook Lives every week. And they did this Facebook Live, the two of them there with their big glasses of wine. And they were honestly getting quite happy by the end of that. And they were so excited. They were going, guys, we did it. We launched the website. We built this ourselves. And just seeing that satisfaction in their face, I was like, this is an amazing feeling. And the response from all of their audience was incredible. But more than that, what they didn't realize was the thing that they had built with their organization. So yes, they had the products. I then challenged them even more and said, what are the community aspects that you do? Can we replicate those online? Can you create an environment where people get the same sense that they do on the cruise, on the vineyard tours, in your shops and things like that? So they started testing all of these different things. And what they found was they thought that they had this boutique shop, but actually all of Australia was crying out for what they had. And they got a notification from Shopify to say, congratulations, I think they ended up at the 13th highest Shopify transaction shop in Australia. And they were like, boom. And then the funniest part is they turned around, John, they said to me, and this is the thing that people don't understand. All of you, like a lot of entrepreneurs have this, like you said, beginner mentality where they're like, oh, okay, I don't really know what I'm doing. And they said the same to me. They said, we need you to teach us social media now. And I'm like, okay, tell me more. They went, well, we do these Facebook Lives, but we really have no idea what we're doing. And I'm snickering to myself going, oh my goodness, this is going to be hilarious. I said, okay, tell me, because I'd seen what they did. And I said, tell me what you do. And they said, we do these Facebook Lives. Cool. How many people generally join your Facebook Live? Oh, not many. It's only about 500 for each live. And that's how many turn up live, by the way. And I'm like, okay. How many of those engage? Like, oh my goodness, everybody. It's so overwhelming, Vince. We can't keep up with all the comments. And I'm like, okay, why do you need my help? And they said, because we have no idea what we're doing. And what had happened is, I had to explain to them, by the way, that those numbers, 500 on a live, big brands I've worked with, Coca-Cola, all these different brands would kill for that kind of figures. And they're like, really? But we're just two little old ladies from Melbourne. I went, yeah. But what they thought was, they thought they had to be these super professional entrepreneurs. Because if you've ever seen one of their Facebook Lives, they are the most fun you're ever going to have online. Because there's these two women going, is it on? Is it on? I think you pushed the wrong button. I didn't push the wrong button. You pushed the wrong button. No, can you hear us? Oh, no, they can hear us, love. Oh, great, love. And there's just this banter between the two of them. But what they had tapped into is what most entrepreneurs miss, and that is authenticity. Yes. They were just being themselves. And I explained to them, don't you dare let me teach you social media. Don't you dare let me teach you how to do a Facebook Live, because you're not supposed to be like me. You're not supposed to be like anyone else. You're supposed to be like yourself. So keep crushing it. And I just love that, man. The satisfaction that, in fact, I remember the moment where, all these companies, like I said, were getting these turnarounds, we're getting, this profitability, even during lockdown. And I had this weird bubbly feeling on the inside, John. I'm like, what is this, man? What's this strange foreign feeling? I haven't felt this in years. And then realize, it's fulfillment. Oh, I actually feel fulfilled. And then I'm like, why the hell didn't I do this years ago? This is insane. So much fun.
It's so great. And what's the URL for them?
That is a good Unwind Craft Cafe, I think it is.
Unwindcraftcafe.com.au.
Yep. The loveliest woman. Yeah.
Okay. Well, and you're talking about a theme that has become just an absolute central piece of everything that I think about and do when it comes to leadership and success and communication and participation in life and all of that, which is that I don't think it's success if it is not fulfilling.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. Yeah, I challenge, and I get in trouble for this one, but you get a lot of people talking about how, success is being the CEO of a company, or it's being on the board, or it's achieving this and that. And I'm like, really? I remember this conversation. We were talking with a bunch of us about success, and people are going, well, the challenge you've got is I can't be on a board because I've got 3 kids and I need to spend time at home with them and see them grow. And I'm like, well, hang on. Who says success has to be defined by anybody else? Success is defined by what your calling is, what you're called to do, and that sense of fulfillment in achieving it. And that may not be being on a board or being what everyone else deems as successful, or a certain figure per year. This is why I get really annoyed at all the coaches out there going, hey, I can get you to 6 figures or 7 figures, or it's irrelevant. What does success look like for you? What do you want to build? Because that may be that you actually want to spend more time with your family. I remember when we had our second child, when we had our first child, we weren't in a position to be able to make any decisions, right? We, in fact, seriously, I thought my wife had a cold. she thought she was a bit sick, so she went to the doctor, and the doctor's like, you may want to sit down. We've discovered what you've got, and it's definitely not a virus. It's a baby in your tummy. And so we were freaking out. That night, we got home, and my wife just looked at me and went, I got no idea what to do to be a parent. And I said, me neither. I have no idea what to do. And we went out to a concert that night and just switched our brains off to everything. We're like, that's better. And the next day, faced the reality of we're going to be parents. But we weren't in a position, like we both had to work. My wife was an early childcare teacher at the time. So we had the fortune of our daughter being able to be with her at a creche while she was working and things. But by the same token, my wife was like, this is not what I wanted. I want to be a mum. Right, I want to be a mum, and I want to help other people. And this definitely working in the early childcare center while I'm wanting to spend time with my kid and not really feeling that sense of empowering and helping other people. That's not fulfillment. That's not satisfaction. So that was a bit difficult. And I had to work ridiculous hours and just to try and get enough money so that we could actually survive parenthood, and feed babies and nappies and all those kind of things that cost a lot of money. But when we had our second child, so we had a big gap. We had originally planned to have like 5 or 7 kids, depending, because we both I come from a very big family. My wife comes from a small family, but she loves kids. So we're like, right, that's our plan. And then my wife went, okay, so I've had a baby, and apparently that really hurt. So she's like, it's going to be a long time in between these. So 6 years later, she's like, I think I'm ready to have another child. And I'm like, woohoo! So we had my son, and we were fortunately in the position where we could choose to do what we wanted to do there. So I had, not only was I working, I also had a couple of side businesses that were doing really, really well. So we're in a position where my wife didn't have to work and just got to feel that sense of fulfillment and being there for the kids and being there for our son while he's growing up. So you've pushed a hot topic button now, John. Honestly, I want to get on my soapbox and go, let's redefine success. Like, seriously.
Yeah, let's definitely redefine success. And, and I don't say it, I think there might be an angle to hear that might make it sound a little arrogant or like I'm taking my luck for granted. Yeah. But I really don't mean it that way. And I don't think it needs to be heard that way. I think there's that element of really being willing to know yourself and listen to yourself and let go of all the external expectations and you should do this and this looks good and that looks bad, and to really just get underneath that and find the satisfying way to do whatever it is you're doing right now. Find the satisfying path wherever you are right now. And if it's not going to be fully satisfying, then start on the path to the thing that will be satisfying, even if you don't get to just jump over there right away, right? Yeah,
that's a really important point, John, because like as you heard in my story, I didn't start out and go, hey, I'm super successful now, so therefore I can just choose to be fulfilled, It is actually a journey. And I'm very aware that a lot of people are in the same situation I was when we had my daughter, where you can't really choose. You don't have the options in front of you. But if you can get clear, if you can get really clear on what you're called to do, really clear on what your sense of success and fulfillment is, if you can get really clear on that, then it's a pathway to there. It is a journey towards that. And that's when you can take those little steps. Like if you're called to be an entrepreneur, for example, really, really simple. You may be in a 9 to 5, you may be in the daily grind at some large corporation where your soul is being sucked out of you every day. And I'm aware that some people like that environment. But if you're called to be an entrepreneur, that's actually what it feels like in corporate. It really does feel like your soul's being sucked out of you. So if you're in that environment, it doesn't mean you have to suddenly go, I quit and I'm going to build something. You can actually build something on the side. You're there 9 to 5. You're not there 24/7. And you got to remind yourself of that. Nobody owns you, right? So you're in this job. Why don't you start building something outside of there? Why don't you start moving towards your sense of success and fulfillment? Yeah.
Well, Vince, there's this very heroic saying of like, jump and we'll build the plane on the way down, right? Okay, that's great. And forget that. Like, if that's what you're supposed to do, you'll definitely know it. If it seems like a dumb idea, it probably is. But what I really like more is what you said. If you're in something and you don't really have the choice to do it or not, because you got bills to pay and all that, take that time, stop watching reruns on Netflix, take that time, start something else, and have it become so successful it pulls you out of that position. Yeah. Right? Yeah, that's also a good way to, I think that's a better way, maybe.
The funniest thing is, because people look at my career, because I had someone comment on this actually relatively recently. We're at a dinner party, because when we came out of lockdown here, we can do things like dinner parties. So coming out of that, we're sitting around and a bunch of people were talking, and they were talking about my previous startup, so Common Ledger. That was a massive success story. We went, 3.5 years, we built that to an 8-figure exit. And I was the majority shareholder along with my co-founder. We brought on board a couple others in there. But over this journey, everyone looked at it and they went, okay, so they see it as, I made a decision to leave a very well-paying job and to go in boots and all. And I've shared quite openly that I knew that would be 6 months of no income, because we knew that we were going to have to, build this from scratch, which is going to take time. We're going to get customers on board. And we knew that it's going to take around 6 months to build towards a seed fund. So we wanted to raise $1 million worth of seed funding. And that way we have the roadmap that we need to be able to get profitable. So that was 6 months of no income. And everyone sees that and they go, oh, you made that decision. You jumped in boots and all, knowing that there's 6 months of no income. And then you got the seed funding and it grew and grew and grew from there. Yes, that's correct. But what they don't see is a year before that. Because a year before that, like my friend came to me and the two of us had always wanted, this guy's a genius, like he's just an awesome individual. And he came to me and he said, Vince, I've always wanted to work with you. And I said, I know, because he used to work at an agency that we hired, marketing agency. He was the tech guy at the marketing agency. We used to hire them a lot to do work with us, because I was the head of digital marketing there. And we were like, okay, so we always work together. And every time him and I were in the room, we we're like, this is like, there was something there. There was a spark, there was an energy, there was some kind of synergy that was happening. So we said, we've always wanted to do something ourselves together. So he came to me and he said, I've seen this opportunity. Like his father-in-law was an accountant and was facing all of these challenges with all the different systems that his clients were using and all this kind of stuff. So he said to me, I think there's something there. So I built this like rudimentary test just to see if I could do it. If I could pipe all of the data from all the different systems, get it all matched up and put it together in one system. And I could. It was successful. He goes, so I think there's a big opportunity there. And everyone thinks that at that point we made the decision to jump in boots and all. But no, we took a year of meeting with as many accountants as we possibly could. As many, because both of us had families, by the way. Both of us had multiple kids. And we were like, we can't just give everything up and jump into this, because if it turns out we don't make any money, then we have to turn around and do something different. And that's going to cause, like we need food on the table for the kids. I had a daughter, of course, so that meant, we had to buy her lots and lots of stuff because she's my princess. So it was like, okay, so what do we do? So we did this year's worth of research until we finally got to the position where there was kind of converging factors. We got to the position where we knew that this had serious legs. We knew that there was a really good chance that this was going to succeed. But also we ended up with another thing, which is that pull towards the entrepreneurship. That pull towards what I knew I had to build was starting to make me really unsettled and really unhappy at my current position. So those two things that came to the point where it's like, okay, now we need to make the leap. Now, the funny thing is, though, timing-wise, John, I remember, so my wife and I, Leanne, we don't go to kebab shops anymore, because every time we go to a kebab shop, we end up making major life decisions. So it's like, oh my goodness. So we went to this kebab shop, and I was telling her, I said, look, because I brought her on the journey with all of this, of course, and I said to her, I think now's the right time. I really think I need to leave and work on this, but it's going to mean 6 months of no income. And she goes, interesting timing. She said, so you're leaving your really high-paying job. You want to leave that to basically get no income for 6 months and then build this business. I said, yep. And she goes, and I know that now's the right time for me to study, because what she had trained as an early childcare educator and worked in office jobs and things like that, was really unhappy with all of that. She knew that she was called to help people that have addictions. Like we'd always been surrounded by people with addictions. I grew up in an addictive family and all this. So she really wanted to make her mark and make her impact. And she decided that now's the right time. She always felt like she wasn't ready for study, because she's like, oh, I'm getting older and study's going to be hard. But now she felt like now's the time for me to leave my well-paying job, go to full-time study, earning nothing. And we realized what we were talking about there was 6 months of no income. Seriously, my son was the highest earner in our house, just with one of the businesses he set up. And he used to sit there like the Godfather. He goes, hey, if you guys need the money, you come to me, all right? Like, sure. But I remember her turning around to me, like that was a very considered thing from her as well. And everyone can see that as, at that point, we both went, throw caution to the wind and build this. Right. But no, because we came from this understanding. I remember something very clear that she turned around and said to me. I said to her, right, we are talking about no income for 6 months. She goes, yeah, but when have we never landed on our feet? And that was the point where I realized two things. I realized we were like ultimate badass as a couple. Like I pictured us being like bad boys, we're both there with our guns and our backs to each other going, I've got your 6, I've got your 6. Yeah, that was awesome, right? In the trenches with her. But it also made me realize that all of these years of trying different things, of learning, of building, of failing early on, and then the successes that came, all of these different things have put us in a position where we knew that despite it looking like we were just jumping in, throwing caution to the wind, we knew that if the decision we made didn't work, we could alter that decision and pivot and try something different. So we had confidence in ourselves enough. But that is a point you have to get to as an entrepreneur. That is not, I never recommend, I always see a lot of young entrepreneurs where they're like, I'm just going to quit my day job and I'm going to create this business. Sure. But probably move into your parents' basement while you do that. Because let's face it, you're not going to make money straight away. You think you are, but it's more difficult than you think. So, yeah.
Well, even though you did that business in 3 years to an exit, quote unquote, I still think I hear in all the things that you're saying one of my favorite quotes of myself, which is, it's easy to be an overnight success when you've been doing something for 10 years.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And I think that we all see I had a mentor and a coach who's just brilliant and still a dear friend. And she would always tell us, don't confuse the fruits with the roots.
I love that,
right?
Man. Yeah.
Like, you don't fall so in love with the fruits that you forget about the roots and what you've been feeding and doing and learning and all that stuff for so long. And now the fruits show up. Great. Enjoy those fruits, but remember the roots.
Oh,
right?
Man, that is so important. It's kind of funny as well, because it speaks to two different things. So one of them is one of my bugbears with the industry, and that is the silver bullet approach. And you'll see this a lot. You'll see a lot of coaches out there saying, hey, if you create an online course, that's going to be the thing that makes you successful. Or if you create a quiz for your business, then everything's going to skyrocket. Or you could be one funnel away from success or whatever. And yes, that does work for some people. But even then, what you're looking at is your interpretation of that story. You could look at a company that sets up one funnel. They're now in the 2 Comma Club or whatever with Russell Brunson, and they're there and they're this massive success story. And you go, oh wow, that was so easy. They just created a funnel and boom, they had success. What you don't see is the years of sweat and tears and blood that was behind that. You don't see the tweaks that they had to constantly make, and they don't tell that aspect of the story. They tell the successes, because that's what makes us look good. I still remember one of my first kind of big companies was called Mobile Combat. And this came out of a concept called Startup Weekend. And so we launched, it was the very first Startup Weekend here in Wellington, New Zealand. And essentially the concept behind this is you have 3 days over a long weekend, basically, where you come together. There was, I think, 112 people from memory at our first one. 112 people in there. It's a mix of developers, designers, hustlers, basically marketers and business folk. Yeah. And each of you pitches your idea. And the ones, they basically whittle it down to 12, and those 12 ideas become 12 companies. And mine, Mobile Combat, was one of those 12. I pitched this concept of a mobile game where it was back in the heyday of when Android had really started coming out. Everyone that had an iPhone was all like, iPhone's the only way, Apple's the king of the world, and I'm so cool because I got an iPhone. And all the Android ones are like, we're the rebels and we love our Androids, and you iPhone users can suck it. And the 3 people in the world that use Windows Mobile were like, please notice us. So I wanted to create a game that capitalized on that. Like, we were watching South by Southwest's press releases and going, imagine we could create a game where you can literally battle with iPhone. If you're on an Android, you can battle with iPhone users in your surrounding. It wouldn't tell you who they are, it wouldn't tell you where they are, but just iPhone users in your area. You would battle them and try and take domination of your area, like a big game of Risk, Right. And then we could see the press releases that, San Diego is now an iPhone place, or Wellington is now an Android city, and Sydney's just now Windows Mobile, because a miracle happened. So this was the idea behind it, and we tested this and we built it over this weekend, and it was like, on paper, it was going the possibility here was huge. What we missed, we were at the right time when it came to things like people's behavior. It was the right time of kind of on the bell curve around people's excitement of these different platforms. The thing that we didn't anticipate was 2 things. Number one, don't hire the wrong developer. So that was a big challenge.
That screwed up a few
and
good
number
ideas.
Number two is we didn't realize how protective Apple was of their IP. And not down to, you just can't use Apple logos. That's fine. We can get around this kind of thing, right? Yeah. But down to, because one of our monetization things, we had 2 monetization aspects of it. One was microtransactions in app, because it was a free app. And the other was going to be sponsorship deals with large corporates. And the way we were going to grow this business is I was securing a sponsorship deal with one of our largest telecom providers, our mobile phone providers here in New Zealand. And they were totally on board. They're like, oh my goodness, this is going to be glorious. We love this. And then they mentioned it to Apple, and Apple went, okay, well, here's what's going to happen from here. If you partner with these guys, if you partner with this startup and you mention anything about iPhones on their app or whatever, we are stripping every one of your stores from their ability to sell Apple products. And they were like, what? Yep, we will not be compared to anybody. And so that was something that we didn't anticipate, and it was pretty much the death knell for the company, that and having the wrong developer. So I shut it down, and I thought, no, I'm not going to fight this. There's other things I want to pursue. It was a lot of fun. We had a lot of drinking, a lot of really cool meetings and amongst the team, and there was so much excitement in there. And so we basically shut down the company. And I remember a few years later, probably about 5 years later, maybe a bit more, they had, it would have been 10 years actually. 10 years later, they had an alumni thing of all the cohorts of Startup Weekend. And we came back together, and I brought my team with me. We got them all back together. Some of them had stayed friends. Some of them had, long lost contact with, but we got them back there. And I watched the trend in the room. And you would see all these people that have gone through Startup Weekend. They go, well, I'm from such and such company. And, we went through and built this, and we tried to make the business work afterwards. But there was a couple of challenges. So I pivoted to this. And then most of the team left. So I pivoted to that. And then I pivoted to a corporate day job at Datacom or something. And I pivoted to that. And you're like, no, you failed. And that's A-okay. And I realized everyone was saying this trend of I pivoted. They all want to look like they were a success there. So it got to me, and I thought, I'm not having a bar of this, man. So everyone's like, oh, this Vince. I said, hey, I was from the first cohort, from Mobile Combat. And everyone's like, ooh, because they'd all heard of us, And I said, we failed miserably. It was awesome. Everyone's kind of taken aback. And I said, we had so much fun. I learned so many valuable things. I literally created the concept of coffee line tests, which most agencies here in New Zealand and Australia use now as standard practice. I created that trying to build this company. I said, I learned so many things along the way. I learned to make sure you get a good developer. Sorry, because the developer's right next to me. Sorry about that, bro. And you go, oh, no, I sucked at it. And I was like, I said, but we learned so much, and we failed, and we shut it down. And now I'm doing this and this and this. And from that point, because we're on this giant circle, everybody else started going, oh, actually, we failed as well, man. We failed as well. And we gave permission for people to go, it's okay to try something, for it not to work, and then to try something else, because everything you go through matters. Every challenge you have, every obstacle you overcome in that business, every success, every failure, all of those count towards who you are, towards your knowledge, your experience, and what you can build now.
Yeah. It's one of the things that I talk about is what a great leadership opportunity sharing. There's a saying from Les Brown, people don't connect with your successes. They connect with your messes. Your message is in your mess. And I say that's not only a great way to connect people with you, that's actually an incredibly powerful leadership opportunity, as you just demonstrated. Yeah. It's something that's wildly worth doing.
Yep.
And it's something that everyone is afraid to do. Now look, at the buffet table, no one's afraid of going first, right? No big deal. If I say, follow me, I'm a leader.
If you've ever seen at a buffet table, I'm usually there before anyone even gets in the room. Like, I love my buffet
Anybody
tables.
would go first, right?
Yep.
But when it comes to sharing a mess and what you learned, admitting a failure and what came of it and how you grew, people don't want to do that. They're afraid of doing that. Yeah. Actually, it's not that they don't want to, they're afraid. And when you go first with that, everybody wants to go second or third or fourth. Yeah. And that's a fabulous conversation. We'll all remember that for the rest of our lives. We'll close down the bar with that. But no one wants to go first, right? Yeah. So that's a fabulous leadership opportunity in my book. And I think you took it, and that's a great story.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say there's an interesting concept behind it. The fear is for a reason. And it's because of this weird kind of false narrative that we have in our head. We think that by showing vulnerability, people are going to think less of us. We think if we talk about the fact that we failed, people are going to be like, oh, okay, well, they're a failure.
What a loser.
Yeah,
don't
exactly.
Listen to this guy anymore.
Yeah, don't trust him around your money or your products or whatever.
Yeah.
But what actually happens, and this is the thing that we miss, what actually happens is two things. Number one, people actually respect us more, because if you've got the confidence to talk about your failures, then people go, wow, this person, like that confidence alone is enough for them to respect you and go, this guy must know what he's talking about if he can blasely talk about a failure like that. Yeah. But the second thing that happens, and this is the leadership aspect of it, is particularly if you're sharing this with your teams, right, is you create this concept of a psychological safe space. And I know Google do a lot of work in that. But what it does is it gives your team permission to be themselves. It's one of the things I used to do, like in every organization when I'm building a team, is the first thing I have to do with particularly the marketing team, because if you think of marketing, if you get anyone to define marketing, I guarantee you, if you had 20 people in a room and say, what is marketing? Every one of them will have a completely different definition of what marketing is. You'll have people talking about the data-driven, the storytelling, the brand stuff. You'll have the teenagers there going, it's about being Instagram famous or TikTok or whatever. The things I'm not
Vince,
allowed on.
Here's what I think it is.
Yeah.
I think marketing is sales without the responsibility. I just like to tease.
Yeah.
I like to tease.
Yeah. I like that. I so want to challenge that now. I'm going, oh man, I want to talk about that.
I know, okay.
Yeah.
We'll do that next time.
Yeah, exactly.
It's mostly a joke to make the sales team laugh.
I know, yeah, exactly. And make the marketing team go, oh, but hang on.
Oh, you're so you.
Yeah. But what happens is, like, when I get these teams together and I talk to the marketing team, I say, right, here's the first rule of marketing team. It's not that we don't talk about marketing team. The first rule about marketing team is you are not going to know everything, and that is A-okay. Like, seriously. And I say to them, look, I've been doing marketing for 30 odd years, right? I don't know everything about marketing. There are basic principles of marketing that probably get taught at universities that I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Right. And that's A-okay, because the results I get speak for themselves. But you don't have to know everything, and you don't have to pretend to know everything. So what I do is I create a space where I say to them, look, if you're sitting in a meeting and someone uses some acronym or some marketing term and you're like, I got no idea what that is, right? If it's not a safe space and they're just nod and grin and go, yep, and then pop in my office afterwards and go, what the hell did they mean by this, Vince? And we'll have a chat about it. You don't get any judgment by me. You don't get any negativity from me. You learn as you go along. And by doing that, what you're doing is you're giving them permission to try new things, to actually take risks. Because if you're creating an environment where everybody feels like they can't say anything or ask any questions for fear of being judged or fear of being, mocked or whatever, then they're not going to take any risks. They create this environment where they're very safe and secure, and you don't push yourselves. But if you create this environment where everyone's like, hey, you know what? I can just be myself. I can admit when I don't know something. I can try something. If it works, I know I'm going to get recognition for it. If it fails, Vince is probably going to take responsibility for it, because that's what a good leader does. So you create this environment where people get to be the best team ever. So it's a really powerful tool. Sharing vulnerability. Oh man, I could talk on it for hours. But so Vince, it's so powerful.
You're a great example of the kind of leader that I bring this up with the most, because and I'm going to say, I think it's probably obvious to people by now, you're a very charismatic leader, and that's awesome. And it's got an enormous downside.
Yes.
The downside of being a charismatic leader is that no one wants to make you unhappy. They think you're awesome. You're so charismatic. They want to be happy. They want to make you happy. So no one wants to tell you when something's going wrong. No one wants to tell anybody when something's going wrong, but especially not the charismatic leader, right?
Yeah.
And so
I was going to say, I wish you told my old CEO that. She was quite happy to point out when things were going wrong.
Well, but I mean, you creating that safe space, I think is something that allowed you to succeed greatly even though you had that charismatic aspect, right? Which it's funny because we always think, charismatic leader, wish I was more charismatic, blah, blah, blah. But there's a real downside if you don't create that safe space. And I think that's taken out a lot of charismatic leaders.
Yeah. Oh man, I seriously think one of the most powerful tools you can have as a leader is to admit you made a mistake or you're wrong. Although I still remember, this is hilarious. This is back in the Cigna days. I came into the office one day. We were under a huge amount of pressure for these projects that we're on. They weren't quite going the way that I wanted them to. We were behind on a couple of things, and some people had let us down. And I was like, and I was so grumpy. And I came in the office, and I'm not normally grumpy. I'm a very positive and optimistic person. I love life. I love people. But I came in the office, and I felt like I was really snippy with my team. And I thought, but it got to just before lunchtime, and I thought, this is not on. This is not good. This is not how I lead. So I called my leaders in and I said, look, guys, I just want to apologize to you all. I'm very snippy at the moment. I'm very grumpy. It's nothing to do with all of you. It's to do with external pressures and the things that we're facing at the moment. And I'm not dealing with that as well as I would like. So that's, as a leader, that's something really powerful you can do. The problem with it though is they turned around and went, wait, you were grumpy? wow, we didn't even notice. I'm like, oh, come on. I'm not that positive that you don't even notice when I'm grumpy. Then I thought, I need to get better at being grumpy, but yeah.
There you go. Well, and the other big advantage of that for entrepreneurs, people who are raising money, people who are looking for, even somebody who's trying to get a job, right?
Yeah.
If you can talk about a mess you had or a mistake you made, and very importantly, and what you learned from it.
Oh, yeah.
That makes you look pretty self-aware, right? Oh, hey, this guy has learned from the mistakes he had. This Vince guy, he's, sounds like
I tell you what, man,
processing up there,
I learned from, because I used to hire a lot of people, obviously, in different jobs that I've been in, and I learned from somebody that I hired. It was a junior that came in, and one of the questions, we had all those kind of pre-packaged questions that were all bollocks, and you never really learn anything about anyone on them. But one of them was, tell me about a time where you've made a mistake or something like that, and what you learned from it, And he turned around and he just said to me, he goes, oh, good grief, where do I start? I've made so many mistakes. One of my biggest ones was blah, blah, blah. And he owned these mistakes, man. He turned around and said, one of my biggest mistakes was this, but I learned so much from it. And I'm like, I immediately thought better of this person. He ended up getting the job. And I'm like, man, the fact that he owned that was really cool. So I do the same with investors. When I'm sitting down with an investor and they go, what are the risks? And you go, oh, look, I'll be honest with you, man. The risks are huge. We could stuff this up majorly. I've got a history of stuffing up certain companies, but I've learned from those, and I've learned how to mitigate those risks, how to surround myself with people that can deal with the aspects that I'm not so good at, like, organization and admin and all those kind of things. Yeah. The finances, you take care of that rubbish. Yeah. I'll just get out there and talk a lot. But by being honest and open with them, that's what they want to see, because they don't invest in your business. They don't invest in your idea. They invest in you. And that's what we found. It even build, like I said, we raised $1 million worth of seed funding. We even raised another $1 million, I think it was, with our Series A. All of that was just from those relationships and being open and transparent and vulnerable with people.
Well, and I just talked with a woman who was on a board, looking at new prospective hires, and she brought this up by her, in our conversation. They had one candidate, and it was a woman, and apparently she just could not admit her mistakes. She so have you ever, where's a place you failed? And she's kind of like, well, I don't fail, right? And one of the guys who on her team who had been in my training said, well, this guy we heard come talk about this stuff said people don't connect with your successes. They connect with your messes.
Exactly.
What's a mess, right? And she relaxed a little bit, but did that thing that I think is it's somebody trying but not quite making it, and there is no try, there's only do or do not. She gave one of those perfect story mistakes, right? That's not actually a mistake, but
I had one of those. Someone said to me, my biggest failing, or my biggest weakness, that was it. What's your weakness? And they said, my biggest weakness is I'm too dedicated and I work too hard.
Right.
I'm like, that sends giant warning bells to me, by the way, because it says you can't balance your life. You're going to get burnt out. You're going to get grumpy. Nah, he never got the job. Yeah. It's
pretty funny. But I think that, I'll just acknowledge it's a difficult thing to do at first, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it gets easier. For me, it got easier and easier because I made a commitment to it, even though it was uncomfortable. And over time, seeing the results, it's still uncomfortable, but it's a lot easier because I know the results, I'm not so worried about.
I think part of that, John, comes down to, and part of that getting comfortable with it comes down to something that I know both you and I teach. So we both teach people storytelling, and we teach them how to kind of craft their message and craft their story. But it really comes from understanding your story. Because when you understand where you've come from and what you've learned through that journey, when you start to understand that everything you've gone through matters, everything you've gone through makes you into who you are, and you understand who you are in that, then it's a lot easier to share that. Like I share openly a story about a bully that I used to have. So I grew up in an abusive family. I grew up in abuse, surrounded by poverty, and school was my safe space. And I always share the story about how when age 11, I had this bully. And this bully just made my life a hell. So I had no safe space. Home was terrible. School was terrible. 2 years of absolute torment. And then when we got to high school, what we call college over here, because it's all confusing, at age 13, I go off to high school, and he went to a different one. And I'm like, I'm finally free. So, I decided I'm sick of being a victim. I'm sick of, people being able to take advantage of me. So I trained in martial arts and trained in boxing, and I threw myself in this for a number of years, from 13 to age 17. And I wouldn't say, I'm Bruce Lee or anything, but I got relatively good. I could definitely defend myself. Sure. And suddenly he gets transferred back to my school. And I share the story because everyone's on the journey with me. And I'm going, and I saw him coming along, and I'm like, I've seen every 80s movie. I've seen every John Hughes movie. I know when the underdog comes out on top, I used to love watching Revenge of the Nerds, terrible and poorly dated movies, by the way. But Revenge of the Nerds, where the nerds come out on top and they're like, finally the bully gets his comeuppance. And I'm like, this is one of those moments. And he comes past me and I yelled his name with a couple of expletives, and he turns around, he takes a swing, and I'm like, ha ha ha, amateur. Takes another swing. I'm like, nope, not now. Takes another swing, and then bam, I laid him out. And he's laying there, and everyone's on the journey with me. So they go, yep. But then I had to share the revelation I had in that moment, because the revelation in that moment was not a great feeling, but also it helped to inspire me to become who I am. And that's why it's comfortable sharing this. I had to share that, I saw him on the ground and I didn't feel good. I thought I was going to feel great, but I didn't. Yeah. And next thing you know, I'm in the principal's office. And the principal's saying to me, basically, like, do you know why you got transferred to the school, Vince? And I'm like, I don't care. I'm a 17-year-old trying to sound cool. I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. And he goes, well, maybe you should. And he said, because you need to understand that this guy grew up in a house where his father beat him and his sister and his mother every single day since he was a toddler. And I'm like, oh. And he goes, and beat the mother so severely in front of the two kids that she lost her life. So basically the dad murdered the mum in front of the two children. Now, the dad's gone to jail, as he should, and the two kids were put in with an auntie and uncle. And they are closer to the school, and that's why they got transferred to the school. And I remember this gut-sinking feeling. I just said, well, I didn't know that. And he goes, well, I wouldn't expect you to know that. But of all the people that could possibly have understood what he was going through and could possibly have been here for him, I would have thought you would have been the one. And that was the moment that made me realize I'm not the hero of the story at all. I am the villain. I'm the one person that had an opportunity to help, and I did not. Instead, I did exactly what everyone else had done to him, what society had done to him. I took it out on him. Yeah. But I can only share that story because that was a huge shame for me. Right, when I understand that I had the opportunity to help someone and I didn't, that was very shameful. Yeah. But I can share that because I know who I've become from that. I know that has driven me to help everybody. I go over and above for anyone in my program. They'll tell you they get the comments. I keep getting to do testimonials, and they're like, the level of service is unbelievable. Like, Vince is always there for us. I can't believe what he does for us. But that comes from knowing what it's like to not be there for somebody.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That is the power of those kinds of things.
Yeah, man.
So Vince, I know we're coming up on the top of the hour here.
Man, time goes so fast talking to you, John. I'm like, we should just schedule like a 10-hour podcast episode between the two of us. Yeah.
Well, it certainly would be fun.
Yeah.
I agree. And so is there anything I didn't ask or anything that you want to say before we go? Is there
I love a storyteller asking another storyteller, is there anything I didn't ask? Man, we don't have weeks here, man.
Yeah. Well, anything in the context of our conversation so far or I'm a firm believer in the power of vulnerability, and we don't have time to go into what that does for your potential market and your potential clients and things like that as well. But I would say this, that as entrepreneurs, we sign up to a weird roller coaster ride, genuinely. Like, it's this nutty roller coaster ride, and we ride some very, very big highs when we're crushing it and some very big lows when we're not. And through all of this, like, a lot of the times we forget that we're human beings, and we also surround ourselves by every other entrepreneur. So we think that everyone in the world is the same as us, but you're not. You're completely unique. You're completely individual. Everything that you've gone through, that whole story, like I talked about with my past, your past, anything like that, has made you into who you are now. And you are somebody very special and somebody very awesome. So own that. Own who you are. Be who you are. Bring that into your brand and into your story. And trust me, you'll get the results. So... Yeah, here.
Feel like I could get off my soapbox now.
Amen, brother. Amen. So awesome. Vince, thank you for taking the time. Thanks for joining us here. And I think, we'll have to do this again sometime. And
Absolutely, man. Yeah.
I'm sure that you and I will be talking again soon. So,
well, I'm having you on my podcast next, man. Anytime you and I chat, like, honestly, I know we've got an audience here. I know all of you are listening to this right now, but seriously, this is just selfishly just me and John getting to hang out. So it's just a miracle we didn't talk more about Star Wars.
Well, maybe next time.
Yeah.
But, may the force be with you, Vince. Thank you.
And with you, always. Yes.
Awesome. And with you, thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. You make Speak Like a Leader show worth doing. And may the force be with you always. Thank you for joining the Speak Like a Leader podcast. Go be awesome.